Hey, it's Tim here. Tableau 2021.3 is kind of out already. Really interestingly, today Tableau updated the coming soon page. The coming soon page is normally released before the features are announced, but essentially a couple of weeks ago, in fact 2 weeks ago, Tableau Online upgraded to the new features, and there's sort of an acknowledgement of that on this page. You can see here that there's a notice for Tableau Online subscribers that they might already have some of the features listed on this page. So in some ways 21.3 is already here, so I'm going to get stuck into it right away. I'm not going to hold back. We're going to make a video about what the features are. What I'm going to do is initially just go through the features, try and sort of talk through what's going on in this release. And then there's actually some things I can already show you. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that in this video. And then we'll do the usual drip feed of features as we sort of dig into them and do proper videos. But I've already had time to play with some of them through the pre-release program. So we can just get stuck in because they're available on Tableau Online. So, you know, why not? So here we are. It's a really interesting release. It's actually the first time I've seen Tableau acknowledge the fact that some of these features are already out there. It's kind of interesting. I used to really like the funfair of just all the features dropping on one day, and with Tableau Online recently, it's actually become apparent that the upgrade goes live a little bit sooner. So actually, if you're using Tableau Online, you're already on some of these features. The only thing you probably wouldn't have had access to is the installer for Tableau Desktop. So if you're using web authoring, you've got probably all the features you need through that. But of course, if you're using desktop, you won't have seen some of these new features pop up. So it's really sort of nice to see that Tableau are acknowledging that they don't hold back. They just upgrade things as and when. But it can cause some instability sometimes. Sometimes upgrades come with bugs. And so having the documentation is super, super handy when we're sort of looking through all this content. Now, as I look through this page, there's some really sort of nice sort of small features here that I think people are going to like. And there's also some features not listed on here. I'll show you how to find the other features that are not listed on this page, the sort of the pernickety ones. This tends to be the sort of more nicely polished page. If you check out my video on how to stay up to date with new Tableau features, you'll see that I actually went through the 7 different places that you can find out about what's new. So check that video out. So yeah, like I said, this is a pretty small release. So let's just quickly go through this. We're just going to quickly go through this. Then we'll do sort of a deep dive. I've created timestamps across the bottom of this video, so you can sort of follow along whether you want to do the quick summary or go straight to the feature. There'll be a timestamp for both of those. So check those out and get stuck in. Right. The first one is linked task with Tableau Prep Conductor. Now, it's really, really apparent that Tableau are now piling features into the new license regime. So if you're using Prep Conductor, you're going to have to be on the new sort of licensing regime to be able to take advantage of this. But this is nice because you can essentially set one prep flow to run on an automated schedule and then have another prep flow run immediately after. Up until now, what you've had to do is sort of set them on staggered sort of schedules, or set them to run at the same time and hope that one runs before the other. But essentially, it's never sort of been a sweet task. The benefit of having linked tasks is, look, if the first one doesn't run, well, then the second one isn't going to be sort of just running for no reason. So this is a really sort of nice thing to have. It would be also great to have this for extract refreshes. Imagine linked extract refreshes on Tableau server. This would be super, super cool. And it would allow us to do so many really cool things. But it's nice to see the thinking coming through in a new product in Tableau Prep Conductor. It'll be interesting to see how this works out. We can actually have a look at this a little later on Tableau Online. So stick around for that if you're up for seeing how that works. Generate rows with Tableau Prep. I actually already posted something on Twitter about this. This is super cool. Essentially, it's got 3 modes. It can either work with serial numbers, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and it will look at the data and essentially fill in the gaps where there is the series is sort of empty, if that makes sense. So if, let's say, you have the number 1 to 10, it will look at 1 and 10 and it will fill the gap in between and give you 8 rows of data essentially in between those rows. The other mode works with dates, exactly the same. It will look at 2 dates, the min and the max, or you can give it the starting point and finish point, and then it will fill in all the missing dates in between those dates and then generate the rows. And then the last one is giving it 2 dates, so giving it a start date and an end date for one particular record. And so it will generate the rows for one record and fill in the gap for that particular record. So 3 really nice modes. Again, we'll get stuck into that in a little while. But again, it's a nice sort of quality of life improvement because it makes data scaffolding for certain use cases much, much easier. I actually managed to talk myself into a use case for the video for this feature that I've actually already done. and check that out when it gets released next week. But I'm actually going to do a really nice use case using support desk data. So check that out when I actually get around to that at some point next week or the week after. But nonetheless, it's a nice sort of quality of life improvement. We're going to check it out very soon. So stick around if you want to see that. Data quality warnings and subscription emails. So we've had subscriptions sort of coming out now. This is sort of turning into a bread and butter capability of Tableau. And now the data quality warnings are going to be embedded in those emails. So you'll see some sort of update. And if there's a problem with that update, it will tell you so you know what you're looking at, which is kind of, again, a nice improvement. It's kind of to be expected. These are sort of things that come from customers. They don't just sort of come from nowhere. Inherited descriptions in web authoring. So this is sort of nice. With the Tableau catalog, you can now sort of see inherited descriptions right within web authoring. So essentially what this means is when you start to work within web authoring, you can see the descriptions that have been loaded into the Tableau catalog. Now, it's interesting that this is only in web authoring and it's not in desktop. It kind of suggests that the desktop experience isn't quite as well connected as we sort of think it is. And so maybe they're still working sort of the back end of that to try and make that sort of a little bit better. Or maybe this is a feature that will only ever stay in web authoring. And what we're really seeing here is a real sort of transition to web authoring. So we never know with these things. We can only speculate, but it'd be interesting to see where that goes. Really cool Tableau notifications in Slack. This actually got announced like a couple of weeks ago, but it wasn't possible to sort of set this all up. So I've actually set up a Slack account. We're going to be setting these up and seeing how our notifications come from Tableau Online over into Slack. Another thing I'm going to be doing is I'm actually going to be setting up a Tableau server that I'm going to be using throughout this whole entire sort of year coming up. And we're going to have lots of videos and lots of content on Tableau server as well. I just sort of decided to bite the bullet and go in there and get hold of Tableau server. I'm sort of trying to navigate how to get hold of a license key though. So I'm trying to figure out a pragmatic way of doing that. I'm sort of thinking that the best option might just be to buy one so that I get a proper sort of genuine experience of what that is like, and also a seat in terms of creator, explorer, and viewer. So one of each. And then also look at some of the Tableau e-learning licenses that get sort of bundled in with that, and sort of go through that experience and talk a bit more about how that works. Because I realize for many people, buying Tableau is not something you may be familiar with. So once you start to understand that process, that might be a good perspective to see. So Tableau notifications in Slack, we're going to check it out and be interesting to see how sort of that works. Personal spaces. Now this is pretty cool. I'm going to dive into this again in Tableau Online. You might have seen this already if you're using Tableau Online. Just pop up on the left hand side. This is a great place for starting to save your own content. You can move content into your personal space. It's entirely private to you, so no one else can really see what's going on. Admins can see how much space is being taken up. They can see the content, but I don't believe that they can see the actual workbooks themselves. So we'll do a little bit of a test. We'll log in and log out and make sure that that all looks good. Okay, so let's close this and go to the next one. Explain data improvements. Since expanding explain data to viewers on Tableau server and Tableau Online, we've continued to improve the experience by refining permissions and explanation types. Site administrators now have the flexibility to choose when to enable or disable explain data features on their site. So in the first release of this feature, the author basically had the ability to set whether explain data was available to the user or not. This is adding something to that, which is essentially giving the admin the ability at a site level to say, look, explain data is enabled or it's not enabled on this particular feature. That's good for site admin controllers, especially if you're using sort of Tableau sites as this ability to sort of test things. You might have, for example, explain data enabled on one site, which is like your dev site, as it were, and then have it disabled on your production site. Give authors the ability to really get sort of grips and see if this is useful. Give potential testers the ability to see what they can get from it. Then really refine what you have selected and what you have enabled. So this allows you to sort of create that split personality between the two environments, and then people can start to sort of get to know this a little bit more. But nonetheless, again, it's a small improvement, but it's always welcome when admins get a little bit more control on the server. Custom sample workbooks in desktop. Now this is so man, this is so good. Over here in the bottom, when you open up Tableau, along the bottom of the view, you always get some sample workbooks, and you're now going to be able to have custom sample workbooks. This is so important for, you know, culture within organizations. Maybe you have a dashboard template, maybe you have some best practice dashboards that you'd like to circulate across your organization. Imagine opening up Tableau and having a starter workbook in there that goes through the Tableau culture or the Tableau enterprise setup in your organization through the product of Tableau. You could even have videos embedded in that workbook that guide you through where to find things, how to get started, how to set everything up, even sort of tutorials sort of all built into that workbook, and then have that embedded here and sort of get that working. So it's going to be super cool to see what people do with this. I'm sure this is going to be a great sort of surface for lots of creativity and just allowing people to start to customize the product so it suits them. You could already customize this right-hand side pane with a web page. So you could already do this. I haven't seen this happen too much, but you could already do this. And so now you've kind of got this ability to control the right-hand side and the bottom pane in a much, much easier way. So that's really cool to see. The next one, rename published data sources. So this one, this is specifically, I think, from Tableau Server and Tableau Online. You can actually go in there and rename published data sources once they're published. I believe you used to only be able to do this by publishing them, essentially overwriting them and then deleting the old one, essentially. But now you can rename them, which means, you know, when things need to change, you can kind of sort of tidy things up, and it's a lot better to use. The nice thing about this is that this name change won't break workbooks. So essentially, this is not surprising because essentially all data sources and workbooks in Postgres work on the basis of an ID number. So everything has always worked using ID numbers in the backend. So really changing the name would not have broken any sort of relationship between the two things, a workbook or a published data source. So just having this sort of cosmetic name carry all the way through the entire sort of infrastructure is a really sort of nice addition. There's a couple more spatial improvements here. Previously, when you did spatial joins, you could only do them between certain types, and now they're expanding the sort of different combinations that you can do. So you've got polygon, line, polygon and polygon, line and line to allow for more complete and advanced analysis of your data. In this example, a line-line spatial join is being used to intersect one dataset that contains major Californian highway networks as lines and the other dataset that contains false lines, also lines. This helps us understand which highway networks are particularly susceptible to seismic activities. So the way this is working is you take two spatial objects. Let's say you have a river and a road. Okay, and it's basically taking the two spatial objects, and when you do a spatial join, what it's actually saying is, look, do these two spatial objects overlap in that sense? And if they overlap, it keeps both of them available in the data set. Then you can visualize them. So if you sort of look at this example here, you can see that the fault lines, I think, are in red. The reason I'm assuming the fault lines are in red because they tend to follow this sort of path along the coast, and they sort of curve all the way around. And then the blue lines to me seem like they're roads because they're sort of following more sort of jaggedy lines, and they seem to go around, roads tend to avoid places of high mountainous regions. So they tend to go around them as much as possible. So that's why there's probably a gap there. And there's sort of lots of roads around the coastal side here. So that's why I'm thinking they're like that. But I might be completely wrong. Once we sort of get hold of the product, we can try this for ourselves and we can see what's going on. We've got another spatial feature here. To enable even more users to perform spatial analysis in Tableau, we've added more WKT and GeoJSON support to Tableau. Easily translate WKT and GeoJSON text markup found in Excel and CSV data sources directly into a usable spatial geometry in Tableau. That's a strange one. I'll have to read the documentation for that because I have no idea what that means. Man, spatial file types, they're just so many. I'm always amazed. Like they have, first of all, you have tons of different spatial file types. Then you have tons of coordinate systems. And it's just so much going on with spatial data. I always find it amazing. But then again, the world's a complex place. They're going to come up with lots of different ways of mapping the world. And so that's to be expected, I guess. ISO 8601 calendar support improvements. So we're expanding ISO 8601 support to more and more databases. So this was actually something that was added in the past. And I believe all that's happening here is that we've added support for the DB2 connector. Essentially, the DB2 is a type of database, I think. And this is now going to be supported in that. So that's good to see. Web authoring improvements. Man, web authoring keeps picking up. New workbook formatting pane. With the new workbook formatting pane, you can now have the ability to format your visualizations and dashboards while authoring on the web. Now, we're going to check this out a little later in this video because this has to be seen. This is one of the biggest blockers to finishing a workbook on Tableau Server, and Tableau Online as well. So if this is actually picking up pace and I can right click something and format it and I can get most of the way there. You might even start to see people editing workbooks, at least on Tableau Online and Tableau Server, rather than having to download them using the connected experience or the old way of just downloading it and sort of getting it working. Drag to reorder single legends. So the new drag to reorder legends feature enables you to reorder single legends while in an authoring mode. That's pretty cool. I think that's probably more of a user interaction thing through web authoring. It sounds to me like web authoring is also sort of taking advantage of the format or the web. So it's maybe going to get features that we won't ever see in desktop just because of the way the web works. So we'll be able to sort of see how that works. New browser formula authoring capabilities. You can solve data problems with even most. Let's start again. You can solve data problems with even the most advanced filtering requirements from web authoring from your own formulas. So that's interesting. We're going to have to play with that and really understand what that means. I'll go through the documentation when we get into that in a second, and we'll kind of see what that actually means. SOQL relationship queries. So when connecting to Salesforce data using custom SOQL, you can now access multiple objects at once using SOQL relationship queries. Easily pull fields from multiple objects in a single query. This is cool. When connected to Salesforce data, you can, so this is cool. You can actually connect to Salesforce directly and essentially use Salesforce SQL. I think that's what that actually is, SOQL. I've never heard of that in my life. I just read it as if I had, but I have no clue. So let's go and check it out. SQL, so Salesforce Object Query Language. Okay, is the language used to query data from your Salesforce organization. So it sounds like a Salesforce specific SQL. And I'm not surprised that we have this now because essentially, of course, Salesforce owns Tableau. So Tableau better support all the capabilities that Salesforce has to offer. New ways to connect to Google BigQuery. Use Google Cloud Services accounts to securely create and manage your connections to Google BigQuery at scale. So I think this is essentially the capability to... I'm not actually sure I know what this means. Actually, I thought I knew what this meant. So, Google Cloud Service accounts to securely create and manage your connections to Google BigQuery at scale. What I don't understand about this is why are they showing a saved credential option over here? So, to me, I thought this was going to be about using your Google credentials to log into Google BigQuery, but it looks like it's slightly different because it looks like what you can do is you can export credentials through some sort of JSON file and upload them and not have to go through the whole pain of setting them up, but potentially you get that file from Google BigQuery. I'm assuming that might be what it is, but purely speculating. We can have a go at that at some point. I don't tend to have the ability to try out lots of data sources because essentially there's just so many data sources and it takes such a long time to get everything set up, then have the knowledge to actually really fully utilize them. So unless it's something like Snowflake or SQL Server or something very obvious that most people have used, it's not a very easy thing to sort of demo and get into. So maybe at some point in the future, who knows, we'll be a little bit bigger and we'll be able to sort of spin up some sort of space on AWS to try out these things from time to time, as long as there's enough sort of interest for it. Let me know in the comments. So data freshness policy. Control the age of data shown to workbook viewers by setting a freshness policy that will not load any cache data older than a set policy. This is very AWS thinking. Imagine in AWS, you have these policies that essentially dictate how old certain things can be before they get moved around. In Amazon S3, you have these sort of policies and rules that migrate content from one tier to another tier based on how long they've been there. You've got something called intelligent tiering, which moves these things around. And we're kind of getting this sort of thinking here. So you can set a policy for specific data sources, and for those data sources that really matter, you can say that, look, the data needs to be this fresh, and essentially Tableau will sort of adhere to that policy. Before, there was like a global wide sort of setting, and essentially it used to be sometimes a guessing game whether you were looking at cache data or not. And because there's so many points at which you can generate cache in Tableau server, it actually just becomes really difficult to diagnose whether what you're looking at is cache or whether you're looking at is live. By the time you've diagnosed it, the goalposts have sort of moved and the data's changed, and so it was a really sort of annoying thing to sort of diagnose with customers. A lot of time on support desks just to find out that it was a caching issue. But now with these policies, I think maybe there's a little bit more transparency because there's now somewhere where someone can set something and they can have some sort of expectation about what to get from it. So this is going to be nice. Easily choose from multiple policy options to ensure that workbooks with live data sources never have unexpectedly stale data. So that's really cool. Tableau Mobile, unified notification of the mobile, and enjoy an improved unification experience on Tableau Mobile. Simply navigate to new notifications in tab in the app, shares, comments, extracts. So this feels like an update to the unified experience we got on Tableau Server 2 versions ago, but now in mobile. So essentially mobile's catching up with all the other sort of platforms. Man, who still uses BlackBerry? Honestly. Like, who is still using BlackBerry? If you're a CEO stuck on a BlackBerry, I'd love to know, why are you still using BlackBerry? Tableau Mobile for BlackBerry and AirWatch Android. I think BlackBerry actually uses Android. I think this is actually what's going on. So if I just search BlackBerry, I think BlackBerry basically ditched their operating system and started using Android. Our devices changed where we work. Our security is changing how we work. Okay, sure. That's Research in Motion. RIM used to be the company that sort of owned BlackBerry. So they don't even have phones here anymore. Wow. They're just a security business. What happened to the BlackBerry sort of phone brand? Oh my word, this is a bit of a tangent. So BlackBerry mobile phones. Let's see what's going on here. Secure devices, BlackBerry. I love how they're selling that under the secure devices banner. Never mind, but it is powered by Android, as I thought. So it's technically an Android operating system, no longer a BlackBerry operating system. But man, they still have the phones with the full keyboards out there, and yeah, I bet you someone out there is loving it. Yeah, I mean, I miss my BlackBerry. I used to love that thing, but I think things have moved on since. So Tableau Mobile for BlackBerry and AirWatch is a new app that provides a quick and secure way to view, analyze, and leverage the data in your organization. The new app includes a newer design that is faster and more intuitive, an improved search and browser experience consistent with Tableau Server and Tableau Online, and enhanced offline capabilities that are quick to load and offer richness and interactivity for visualizations. This is interesting. I always had the impression that Tableau Mobile for Android was one app, and so I thought they were just deploying Tableau Mobile for each of these platforms using Android, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there's actually something more about that. So let's just search AirWatch Android and see what's going on here. Setting up Android devices in AirWatch. AirWatch is an MDM mobile device management system. I think I figured that much out. But I don't know. It's an interesting one. I don't know. I don't understand why, if it's an Android-based system, why it needs a separate. It almost sounds like they've just introduced it. So I'm gonna have to check that out. I think it might just be support for the MDM services in BlackBerry and in AirWatch. I think that's what's actually going on here. But nevertheless, we need to find that out. Accessibility. This shouldn't be last. This should be one of the first things that Tableau talks about. But nevertheless, accessibility for dashboard navigation provides a more consistent and intuitive tab order, improving the keyboard navigation experience for everyone who uses their keyboard to navigate dashboards. So sometimes when you hit tab in Tableau, it kind of skips through specific things. And if you're using a text reader because you have maybe visual impairment and therefore you have something that's reading out the interface to you, when you hit tab, it used to sometimes go in a really bizarre order. It didn't sort of make sense on screen as you literally watched it happen if you could see the screen. And so I think this is nice to see. Additionally, the full drag and drop capabilities provide customers with more control and flexibility when building dashboards. So this is cool. I'd love to see exactly what sort of they mean by this. Sometimes these things are like multiple features merged into one, so it's always sort of interesting to see how that goes. Okay, so that's pretty cool. This is sort of the whole rundown of the features. Now what we're going to do is start playing around with some of these. I can't go through all of them because I don't have access to absolutely everything. Some of this stuff needs time to set up, and the videos I do tend to be a little bit more polished than just me going through them on screen and bumbling my way through them. So next week I'll obviously do the proper videos for this, so stick around for that. But nonetheless, we're going to get stuck into some of these. I'll start with generate rows for Tableau Prep because I think this is really, really cool. Before I show you that, I just want to show you something else. The documentation for this is also already available. Let me show you how to get hold of it. Okay, so I just cut straight through to this web page. Essentially, when Tableau Online launched, some of the menu items in Tableau Online started referring to that release of Tableau Online because it's 2021.3. So what you can sometimes do is guess the URL for the release. And if you go to help.tableau.com and you type in v2021.3, then whatever version of the product you're looking at, so in this case, I'm looking at desktop, you'd actually get the up-to-date documentation for this current release, because of course what happens over time is the sections that need updating get updated and the new features get updated onto this page. So it's essentially just like a live CMS. It's constantly updating. So if I click on what's new here, you actually get another rundown of all the features that are actually available in this release. I think all the key features are actually on this page, even though this is the desktop page. There is typically another page for server, but if I go back to this one here and I go to, I think sometimes what you have to do is actually go to this one, and then if you link through, sometimes it also links through to other aspects of the product. So if, for example, we look at the data freshness items, so a Tableau desktop features, new in Tableau Online and server, use the same action, dialogue across. You see, some of these are not unique. Some of these are actually altering experiences in desktop and online and server, but they're not actually the features I want. So let me open up a new help page and I'll just show you how guessing the URLs work. So what you do is you go to one of the versions of Tableau server. I tend to go to the Linux one and just hit the HTML page. And then what you can do is if you just grab v2021.3 and just copy that, and then you just want to replace the exact same part of the menu system here. So where it says current, hit paste and just hit enter, and boom, it loads up the 2021.3 documentation. So now that we're here, it has a bit of a planning guide, which is good. What we can do is we can click on this option here, which says what's new. So you can see that this is the server updated page for what's new in 2021.3. It's not as nice as desktop because, of course, there's slightly less features. So you can go through this a lot quickly, but you can sort of see a summary here on the right-hand side of the key features that you can sort of touch on. So again, we'll sort of maybe just have a quick look at this a little later on. One thing I do need to do is I need to start doing more videos on server. It's the number one bit of feedback that I keep getting from people. Generally, I think I'm going to start making videos about more products that I work with every single day. I don't just work with Tableau. Tableau is like, 80 to 70% of the sort of surface that I touch. The rest is pretty much enabled by other tools, Tableau Prep, Alteryx, Fivetran, Snowflake. I don't do as much AWS as I should do, but I have a bit of sort of expertise there and knowledge that I can sort of share here. So I'll try and do as much of that going forward as I possibly can. I sort of hear the feedback on that particular point. So it's definitely something we're going to focus on. I'm also doing my server certification again at some point next year, early next year. So we're going to have to go through that content anyway. So we might as well sort of share that knowledge as we go through it. Nevertheless, let's go through this list. So replace Tableau sample workbooks with some custom sample workbooks. This is more or less the same list of stuff. It's a little bit more precise. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm just going to switch over to Tableau Prep and let's look at some new rows functionality that's available there. Okay, so we're here in Windows. I've actually had to switch over for some bizarre reason. I'm not going to go into this. I'm just having a bad time with Tableau Prep on the Mac. So I've just given up trying to make it work, and I'm just going to use it on Windows through a virtualized environment for now. So here I am in Tableau 2021.3. I've got a copy of it installed on the machine. So I'm opening up a workflow that I've actually got set up already that I'm just playing around with just to sort of see how the new rows function works. And in essence, this is sort of really interesting. So let's just have a look at this. My data source here is slightly missing, so let's go ahead and make sure this is working correctly. And here we go. So we've got a data set that we can look at. Now I apologize that this screen isn't as sharp as it should be. Essentially I'm virtualizing Windows, so it's going to be a little bit more fuzzy than I'd like it to be. But nonetheless, at least we've got it working, and this is sort of a passable experience. So over here we've got the customer data. Essentially, this was mock data that I generated from Mockaroo, and I've done something silly here, which is I've unioned them just to sort of try and enable something for the next step. But essentially, these are the three modes I was talking about. If we just kind of zoom in here, we can kind of get a better look at this. So here we've got dates, we've got sequence, and we've got the fill gap between dates. So if we look at this first one, essentially it's a really sort of nice implementation. I'll do this in a lot more depth. Each of these options I think has been really well thought through. What I really like about Tableau Prep is they remove complexity from the feature. Something that should be complex is made pleasantly simple, and it's not sort of over-engineered. There is more that these features can do, of course there is, but it's just got the right level of engineering, I think, to really make it a great experience for most people. And that's sort of a really important point. What experience is going to lead to the most people getting the most out of this? Not necessarily like the Swiss Army knife approach that you sometimes get with Alteryx, where you've just got like hundreds of capabilities and features and sort of nooks and crannies. And that's because, Alteryx is a much, much more mature product. Tableau Prep will eventually have to support these things. But the sort of nice thing about Prep, at the moment at least, is that it's not cluttered and it's sort of not too busy. So it's really cool. It's really nice seeing these features. So here we've got dates. You can see that essentially what's happened here is that I've selected a start date and an end date. And I had a small issue here where it wasn't actually observing the dates that I was giving it if I sort of jumped to a different date. So I'll just leave this as standard. I think it might just be a side effect of the beta version that I have here. But essentially you can give it a start value and an end value, and you can also use a min and max, and it will automatically go and find the min and max values from the data set. So two really cool options. And of course, if you're working with dates, you get the nice date slider here. And you can, of course, go around and sort of just change that around. You can tell it to update the existing field or change it to create a new field. So if you need to keep the existing field for some reason and you want to create a duplicate field, that's also available. And yeah, this is really nice. You can even choose the increments, weeks, months, days, and you can change the number as well. And it's going to sort of miss every day or go every other day. Whatever you really choose, it does a really nice job of just making that step a little bit easier. And then, of course, you have the ability to choose what it does with the gaps that it's creating. So nulls, null or zero, or copy from previous row. So if I sort of move this up, you can kind of see the net effect here where you get lots of nulls sort of being played out here, because essentially they've been created from the record and sort of padding the data out. So if you need to pad data out in this way, this is going to be such a great quality of life improvement, especially if you're working in web authoring. Imagine being able just to quickly spin this up through the browser, update a data source with the relevant bits that you need, and then off you go. The best use case I can think of this actually is this date range. So this particular one, this is an absolute lifesaver, because when you're working with support desk data, one of the things you're always trying to do is visualize at any given point, any given day, how many open tickets do you have. And so what this lets you do is essentially lets you use all the different dates from a support ticket and essentially pad out the days in between them. And those days in between are essentially the days when the ticket is open or when it's in a certain status. And if you can pad out between all these different dates, what you essentially then get is one particular ticket might have 700 rows if it was open for 700 days. But you can then filter to one canonical day and take a snapshot of what the ticket count was on that day, because you've been able to pad it out. Before this, what you had to do is union the data on itself. So you'd have to take a snapshot of the data and then say, look, on this date, this is when this was open. On this date, this is when this was open. Then you'd have to do a running total from the beginning of time, which would persist the number 1 over the extent of the data. And so to get an accurate number for any given day, you have to persist sort of this full historical perspective of the data. With this, in combination with the data model, you can even factor in things like bank holidays and count how many working days has a ticket been open for without even having to do any unions or SQL to get everything set up. So that's actually the use case I'm going to go through at some point in the future. It's going to be a really, really nice sort of thing to do. But it's a really sort of nice implementation. I really like it. I'm not going to sort of spoil it too much. The sequence one also works in sort of lots of different ways. You can see here that what I did is I removed every other number and I'm just filling through the sequence essentially. And again, the controls are really well thought through. There's nothing so complex about it. It's very simple. And it kind of behaves like a clean step, because you can still do steps, changes that are related to the steps. So you can remove fields and add calculated fields. So if in this step you need to do something that makes sense in this particular step, you can do it as well. So this is a really cool feature. I love that everything sort of happens here within one step. And I like that you can even sort of change the order of these two things around and get things working. So that's the prep new rows. Again, I'm not going to sort of murder this too much. We'll do a proper video explaining how it works, and that will be really sort of good to see. So this is nice to see. If I sort of minimize this and we go back to the list and see what else we can have a look at. So let's go to the coming soon page. We've looked at prep, generate rows, data quality warnings, subscription emails. Let's look at personal spaces, because I think that is something very cool. So let me log into my Tableau Online instance here. I think I'm already logged in, or it should sort of send me straight in. Here we go. So let's go straight in. And what is really cool about this is obviously Tableau Online has already updated. So if I go in here and I look at about Tableau Online, you can see that it's running 21.3. And so some of you might have noticed on Tableau Online that you have this feature here called personal spaces. And you would have clicked on it and you would have gone in and just sort of found Tableau telling you that, hey, this is the place where you can create your own content. And so this is really cool. Essentially, everyone's being given the ability to create content in this space, and it's only visible to you. So you're the only one who has access to this. Admins can see how much space you're taking up. They can see what workbook is in there, but I don't believe they can look inside of the workbooks. I think there's some sort of clever design there. It's a little bit odd because admins have always had God access to a lot of content on Tableau server, so it's always been sort of like an interesting one. And I think what they've been doing is they've been adding capabilities. So I think in the future it will be possible as an admin to be an admin but not get sort of intricate access to data sources that maybe are sensitive, for example, that contain your pay or something like that. So in essence, this is really cool. So let me show you how it works. I've got the Superstore workbook here. If I go to the Superstore workbook, you'll see that it loads up the Superstore as expected. But if I go to the three dots, I've also got the option to move content from anywhere on the server to my personal space. So this is really, really nice to see. You can see that you can move the content across. And so now when I select that and we just click on it and say move content and then move content again, then essentially it moves this out of the public space into the private space. So now you can see that it's in my personal space. And so now if I go into it, you'll see that I have that workbook. You can also start content here. So at the moment you can only create workbooks. I'd love to see this also for prep flows and some other content that's sort of available on Tableau Online. I'm an admin here, so I should be able to create any content that I want to create. So I'm sure it's coming. I'm sure they're going to make this much nicer experience. I also think Tableau is definitely very soon going to break away from this grid layout. This grid layout is great for content, but it's not great for some of these more interesting areas, specifically this group of icons here. So personal spaces, collections, and explore currently all use the grid system, but nonetheless they don't really, this is not the best setup for them. So there's a much better layout that I think you can achieve. So be interesting to see how that evolves over time. So this is really cool. Again, we'll dive into this and some of the details and specifics once we've kind of gone through the documentation and we know more about what's going on. Let's go back to this list. What else can we have a look at? Explain data improvements. That needs just sort of a demo example. So that's sort of an obvious one. It sort of self-describes itself. There's a few other web authoring improvements. So they're talking a bit about the formatting pane. So let's go see if we can sort of explore this a little bit. So what I'll do is I'll go into that Superstore workbook and let's have a look at what this actually means. Let's give ourselves as much space on the screen as we possibly can. And here we are. We've got a sort of an editing interface. Now, one thing I've noticed, this is definitely crisper. It loaded a lot quicker. It was a lot sharper. And again, we're getting more and more of these sort of elements over here on the left-hand side. Now, one of the features it was talking about is the ability to move things around inside of this layout. Yeah, look at that. So you can actually drag and drop these things now inside. So you can move things in and out of the hierarchy. So this is new in 2021.3. If you've got a bunch of things inside of a hierarchy, let's say can we move this out? We can't. It's sort of frustrating. Here we go. There it is. So if we go into this tree, and we go into this vertical item maybe here. Yeah, here we go. So what we can do is, for example, we can move these around and it swaps the two charts around. So this is sales by segment and sales by product on the bottom. And we can just swap those two around by switching them here on the left-hand side. So that's cool to see in web authoring. Now, sometimes what we want to do, I always right-click the axis and this is the one thing I'm always like, come on, man. I need to be able to do this in web edit so that I don't have to download the workbook. If I edit the axis, there's no option to sort of format it, which is annoying. So let's try a couple of other things, because sometimes right click is sort of hogged by the browser, so you can't do as much as you want. So what I'll do is I'll click on that, and then I'll go to formatting, and then I'll go to workbook formatting and just see, okay, what is going on here. We do get it here on the right hand side, so this is a little bit better. But what I'm really looking for is the formatting options for this sheet. So let's go into the sheet, because I still can't find what I'm looking for, and let's see if I can do anything here. So if I format, here we go, format worksheet. And okay, this is what we're talking about. We're starting to get, this is starting to sort of catch up to what we expect. So the interesting thing is this is only specific to this worksheet. So Tableau, book, background, fill, interactive controls, legends, filters, highlighters, and parameters. So now you can format those nicely. And what's clearly happening is, look, they're building out this user interface. I don't know if you've noticed, but this right-hand side panel on Tableau is becoming used more and more and more. So, we've kind of run out of space here on the left-hand side, and it's mostly used for analytical capabilities like the data pane, the analytics pane. And so what they've started to do is put stuff on the right-hand side like metrics, explain data. All of these things are going on the right because they're more contextual to what you're seeing. The left is sort of the analytical side, and the right is sort of this more contextual side. So again, that's really cool to see. It's nice that that's there in essence. What else can we do? I just kind of want to see, like, what else can we format? So we can format animations, filters, and sets. I think that just opens up this pane. So the classic thing is, look, how do I just get the units? This is the number one thing. If I can format the units on this axis without having to do too much work, then again, that would be a massive win. Even if it was something down here, I don't mind if it was sort of buried inside of this axis control here, where there was like a formatting section or a formatting tab where I could format it all there. That would be fine, but I just can't do it. Format worksheet goes to this entire area on the right hand side. So for me, that one thing is still outstanding. I'd need to be able to format this axis and change it. It's something you do so often. You go into a table, you change the formatting for a number or something else. I guess the way you should do it, really strictly speaking, is to right-click cells, go to data format. So that's all fine. But number format, here we go. So again, I don't have that here. So folders, geographic role, change data type. No, I can't format that. So man, it's frustrating. Like, it's just the one thing. I don't know why this is such a big deal. I don't know why this is so hard to do. There must be a good reason why it's hard to do. But I can't figure it out. Maybe I'm missing something. Maybe if you know what needs happening here, let me know. What you can definitely do is clear the formatting from the entire sheet, which to me is sort of just like, why would that be what I want to do, if that makes sense? If I go to formatting here, why would I clear worksheet formatting from this entire sheet and go back to square one if I can't undo it? And the interesting thing is, let's let this load and let's see what it does. Let's see exactly sort of what it does. It's always thinking about it and it stops. So now you see that formatting has been removed. And then now if we go back and undo, that's technically reapplied it. So like that process of going forward and back has reapplied all that formatting. So it must be possible. Like something must be possible to do with the formatting. Color is fine. Detail, labels, these are all okay. They sort of have their equivalents, and you can go in here and, set all these up exactly as you'd expect. So we're getting there really quickly. It's just lacking those like little nooks and crannies that would make this the perfect feature. Drag to reorder single legend. Yeah, new browser formula authorizing capabilities. So this is interesting. I don't think I noticed this. So editing this, I don't know what this actually means. I don't know what I'm missing here. I can edit the filter, open this. These is all new. So I think what I need to do is this is one of the things where you just need to play around with the feature and really dig into exactly what's new. If I go to the documentation, advanced filtering across Tableau desktop, online, and server. So let's see this. From whenever you use Tableau, you can now use advanced filtering that was previously available only in desktop. Use wildcard filtering to filter for strings that match your file or author formulas that work with conditions, or top end filters for more information. Okay, so this is just more like getting parity from desktop over to web edit. So essentially, when you're sort of working with filters, that's an action, so it doesn't really sort of help. Whenever you're working with this sort of general set of filters, you can see that they've got a slightly different setup for these groups. And I think this is actually what's going to happen in the main product. Eventually, this will just be what we see in Tableau Desktop, and we will basically get this browser interface. And it actually does feel nice and fast, which is sort of good. But yeah, I think this is what we'll start to get, because now you've got these sort of much more interesting filter capabilities in here. And of course, once they're in a worksheet, you can sort of right click and bring out the filters and bring them out over here. So if you show filter, then you can create them and sort of show them here on the right hand side. And when you're done with the other stuff, you can sort of get rid of it. So that's really cool. But hey, listen, I've been talking for a long time. So what I'm going to do is I'm probably going to call it a day there and just stop there. And I've been have so many tabs open. Man, this is crazy. So look, there's a lot to unpack here, a lot of exciting things. It's not a big release as before, man. If this was a bigger release, I wouldn't have been doing a video this long. We would have been here for ages. So lots of stuff to get stuck into next week and the week after that. I'm assuming Tableau is probably going to drop the release next week at some point, purely because there's always sort of an order of events. Essentially, what happens is you get Tableau Online upgrades roughly 3 to 4 weeks before the actual thing drops, without fail. It's like clockwork. So when Tableau Online upgraded 3 weeks ago, I was like, right, Tableau is probably going to update this in the next month or so. And then this page turned up today. So that means essentially this is sort of live, so people can have a look at it. So my hunch is next week or the week after that, we're definitely going to get Tableau sort of dropping this. So I'm going to start making content for the stuff I already have access to through Tableau Online. We're going to set up as much as we can so we really need to get 100% coverage on some of these features, because in the last few releases, it's been really tough just to do with personal commitments and everything to get like proper coverage of all the features. So I've only focused on the key features. So we need to try and get back into that sort of mode and get everything covered. So we're going to make a good push. Even the stuff that is not easy to make content on, we will make a video about why it's significant and maybe roll it up into one sort of roundup as well. That makes a lot of sense. Okay, so thanks for watching. Thanks for spending a lot of time watching this. If you made it to the end, you're an original Tableau Tim supporter. I love it. Be sure to head to tableautim.com once this is all live. There are lots of playlists sort of being updated. I stopped doing this thing where I do a bunch of videos and drop all the playlists at once. 2 reasons. YouTube doesn't like that. YouTube basically says no. We like content drip fed every day. So I stopped doing that. And what I do now is I actually put the videos up on YouTube all at the same time. And then over here, you'll actually be able to see them ahead of time. So if you come here to 21.3 when it's live, you'll actually find that all the videos might already be live on this web page. And then what happens is on YouTube, I stagger the release essentially, because YouTube lets me have the video there as unlisted, but it doesn't like when you make them public all at once. So sometimes you'll see a video go live and it's already had 100 views or something like that. That's because it's been unlisted for a while and it's already been available on my blog. So very soon the blog will become the best place to start watching content and find out what's new. You can set up an RSS feed to it and get stuck in that way. So every time something updates, you get a ping or you get an update in your RSS feed reader of choice. I'm always trying to do new playlists. So I've started going through quick tips. These are sort of small things that shouldn't take longer than 5 to 10 minutes to cover. I've got some of the older playlists as well, which I still need to go back and fill out. I've got some of my more complete playlists here on this one on Tableau level of detail calculations. This is 5 videos. You watch that to the end, you'll be absolutely sort of set in terms of what's going on with everything. Tableau functions, this is probably going to be one of my biggest playlists yet. It's got a little bug here where there's some gaps for some stuff I haven't done yet. But we were slowly working through all these functions, all these really important functions, and making sure that everyone understands exactly how they work. So look out for these videos as and when they drop. And of course, I'll catch you in the next one.